Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Ask the Leader event here today from the Town Hall. It's a busy schedule ahead tonight, so I'm pleased to say we've got an action-packed event. This programme is being recorded for later transmission on the Council's social media channels. And indeed, Ask the Leader is the chance for you, members of the public and the people on here tonight, to ask me direct questions, which I'll try to answer, or indeed I'll have some assistance from officers. And if you'd like to take part in a future event, all you need to do is email asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk. And this one being the last one of the year, because we're now getting towards Christmas. So we'll be back in January for another one. So I've got a number of questions. So I'll kick off with the first question and I'll say welcome and good evening to Ian Gillis. So Ian, if you'd like to put your question, we'll do the very best that we can.
Right, okay, I can't remember what it was word for word, but it was relating to the number of what you can only refer to as advertising trailers throughout the city. You normally see them at key junctions, and just lately in Hampton, where I live, which, as you probably know, is plagued by lack of adequate parking facilities. We've got that beauty there. That was, until a month ago, it was on the roundabout at Goldhay Way, at the junction of Goldhay Way and Hampton. It got ticketed and then moved, and then overnight it appeared here in the community car park. Where it's positioned, and if you can see that there properly on the phone, but it's basically, this is a car park used by people taking their kids to school, and that is creating quite a blind spot where you've got parents walking their children on the pathway behind where that van is. You've also got people coming out of the car park into a very narrow entrance. That's been there for nearly a month now. The councillors, Marco's been on it. He's been posting in the community group about it. It's basically saying his officers have exhausted all possible recourse for it. But regardless of that one incident, we see them all over the city. Gibbs Removals, everyone knows who they are. All these buy and sell cars. And there's possibly only maybe 3 or 4 companies responsible for all of these trailers everywhere. They're at the junction of Aldi and Stanground. They're in towards beyond Cardea. They're everywhere. And in many cases, they are causing visual obstructions at junctions. But one of the sub-questions to you, Wayne, was, what do you say to genuine companies that pay you or pay the council to advertise on your roundabouts, to advertise on your billboards? Sometimes these things pitch up next to them. What do you say to those people that pay you possibly £500, £600, £700 a month for that privilege? And the other sub-question was, when these things are abandoned and sometimes padlocked. I mean, irony is on the A15, it was actually padlocked. One of these things was padlocked to a no stopping, no waiting sign. Unbelievable. But what is the difference between these trailers being dumped on the roadside and fly tipping?
Okay, look, firstly, let me say I agree with you. I share the frustration. I may be bringing Claire in a second, who's responsible for that. But I will read out the answer. But I was so frustrated myself that I think it's probably within the last 18 months, I had the highways team put signs on all the bridges that go over the Parkway.
Yeah, they were always on them bridges.
Yeah, well, they're now stopped. That's because of me. Because again, I was getting regular complaints about that there are a distraction, on the Parkway. So our highways team made, I hope it's all of them, but about 18 months ago, a chap called Peter Tebb, who works for us, did some work to, if you drive on those bridges now, you'll see there is a little sign that stops that. So we can extend that kind of signage in order to stop people parking where they shouldn't park, because it is an eyesore and it is a nuisance. And I don't believe we've exhausted everything, because I would actually pitch up with my wagon and tow them away, and then take them down the depot, and they'd have to pay to get them released or scrap them. But that's my sensible common sense head. what we can do legally, Claire will no doubt talk about in a minute. So I entirely agree with you. By the way, if somebody was paying me £700 a month for that signage, I'd be very happy. They pay a modest amount.
Right.
But you're right. It's unfair on the legitimate people that do that.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, people like Gibbs, and I'll name them, should be ashamed of themselves. And in fact, I would encourage people not to use their services. And any law-abiding citizens can tell for them, see for themselves that they clearly shouldn't be doing that. If anything, they're not doing themselves any favors.
That is a lot of comment that people get. So why would anyone use them?
Exactly. So look, let me just read you some of the stuff here that just the kind of chapter and verse, and then I might bring Claire in. So the local authority has various powers under parking and environmental legislation to move or remove these vehicles from the roadside. Sometimes it's difficult if it's private property or the ownership of the land is in dispute, but where it is clearly ours, and there is, and we put in legislation to do that. The council introduced a verge and pavement parking policy in the summer of 2018. Since this date, the scheme has been implemented at 32 prominent locations used by vehicles displaying company adverts. These restrictions prohibited motor vehicles from being parked, and where vehicles did park, penalty charges were issued. Since July 2018, we've issued 395 penalties for parking in verge restricted areas, some of which were implemented due to vehicle advertising. Several more of these unauthorized advertising trailers were either moved or removed using environmental enforcement powers for fly posting and abandoned vehicle legislation. So you can report these things, to the council. 747474 is an easy way. But Claire, do you want to come in and add anything to that for Ian about? You might want to take up his particular example and get to the bottom of why we can't do anything.
Yeah, that's been determined as private land, I believe. But when possibly O&H, so they are.
Well, again, we have very good relations. We have very good relations with O&H, and I'm sure, Claire, if you take that away as an action, and if you need a contact, I have one. And O&H are, by and large, they're good people. They would not want to cause any distress in the community, and I'm sure they would put a notice on it saying remove it or will remove it. Claire, but do you want to add anything? Because it can be complex, the law, but Ian, I entirely agree with you and I support what you're trying to do, but Claire might want to add some context.
Yeah, to start off with, Ian, I will take that up, the Hampton issue that you've mentioned tonight. I'll go and speak to O&H. I'll make sure that we have explored absolutely every piece of legislation available to us. So I'll take that away and I will contact you direct after this meeting with my findings. As Councillor Fitzgerald said, we have put these parking and verge parking restrictions on the overbridges and at prominent locations where we was getting repeat offences. If it's a vehicle with a registration number, if it parks there, then we continue to issue the fixed penalty notices, but it is a cat and mouse game because then they're likely to move elsewhere, and then we start the process. Other trailers that we've removed that have no details on, we take them away under the fly posting legislation that's available to us. Private land, it can get complicated dealing with different landowners, but this one in Hampton I will take up. The other legislation that's available to an authority is highways. So if a van is parked and it is causing an immediate safety issue, so not just on the verge, but it's causing a dangerous safety issue, then we can actually remove it straight away. But we have to meet that. The other thing that we are going to do is we're going to go and speak to other local authorities, because we can't be the only one experiencing this, to see if they've come across a power or doing something differently that we could adopt in Peterborough. But I can show you frustrations because we do seem to move them about and try and enforce the best we can. But definitely that one in Hampton, I will take away with me tomorrow and look into.
Okay. Just, I don't know what the recourse would be, but as I said at the top of it, does seem to be only perhaps a half a dozen regular companies doing this, and myself and Wayne have named a prominent one. Is there any action to actually go to these companies and say, "Oi, knock it off"?
I think what we'll do, and I'll ask Claire to do it today. So, by the way, I should say what Claire does. Claire, you want to actually tell everybody what you do?
So I'm the head of the Prevention Enforcement Service at the local authority.
Right.
Okay, so I think Ian, it's not beyond the wit of man for us to work out who the regulars are,
and they leave contact details everywhere,
and send them a letter, that says, if you continue to do this, we will use all our necessary or available powers, I should say, to prosecute you, because it's an annoyance to the public and it can be dangerous. Yeah. So I think, Claire, if you could maybe get a list together and, maybe speak to Ian as well. We need to talk to him about the other thing, just to make sure we've not missed anybody. But, look, I'm a member of the public just like you, and I travel around the city. And as I say, I stopped the ones on the Parkway, and Gibbs Removals was one of the main people there. And that probably happened about maybe over a year ago now, because it does take time, because, you have to change a traffic enforcement order on each road. We can't just, stick a sign on. You have to actually change the legislation, and then you have to advertise it, and it takes months, and, the council has a proper process to follow. But that's one improvement, Ian. So thanks for highlighting it. And I'll task Claire to go away and report back to you as to, the letter, and maybe you can give her details, and we'll contact O&H about that particular problem. Is that okay?
Yes, fine. Thank you very much.
By all means.
Sign off as explained. So give my best to Louis. I haven't seen him for a little while, but he's doing very well down south these days.
Yeah, probably better explain that is my son. So
I used to knock around with him years and years ago. Used to go quite hardest and everything back in the day.
So by all means, stay online and listen, or you can exit the call, whichever you like.
But look after.
But listen, thanks for taking part.
No
Thanks,
problem.
Ian.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, folks. So you are listening to Ask the Leader with me, Wayne Fitzgerald. I'm the council leader here in Peterborough. And if you want to take part in a future event, all you need to do is just email me. Just ask the leader at peterborough.gov.uk. Any question that you want to put to me or my cabinet or another councillor or an officer about a query you got, a question you got, a problem we can try and help with. I can't promise to fix everything or do everything, but at least we'll try, just like with Ian there. So we'll move on to question 2 tonight, and I believe it's Nathan Richardson. Good evening, Nathan. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to just commend the council for doing this. I think it's a really great initiative. I live in Warrington. I've lived in Warrington for about 25 years, which is very nice. But my question was about the sort of outdoor sporting facilities, which over the years, since I've been in Warrington, have gradually sort of deteriorated, particularly the AstroTurf football pitch and the tennis courts, netball pitches, which can be dangerous on occasion, and they've got to a state where they vastly haven't been able to hire them out as well, the tennis courts, during the summer. So my question was really what in terms of the future, is the council able to sort of seek any funding to try and sort of start maintaining or improving the maintenance of the outdoor sporting facilities in the sort of North Warrington area?
Well, thanks, Nathan, for your question. It's great that you can join us tonight, and it's great that you take such an interest in the area you live. And I know another member on this call might be very interested also in the Warrington area, which is a great place to live. So I think I've got some good news for you when I've done a little bit of digging here. So if you just forgive me, I'll just read a couple of things for you. And then if you want to come back, or, I can bring Jamie in, who is in charge of all this kind of stuff. He's on screen here. I can see him poised. He's like a coiled spring, ready to go. So the tennis courts are bookable through the leisure centre. That's not changed, I understand. The courts, though, have recently had a detailed clean to remove moss and debris and cut back the tree line and bushes and repaint the netball lines. New tennis nets have also been bought. The courts are only used for netball in the autumn and winter, as this is out of the tennis season. And there are, of course, no floodlights for the courts. During the autumn and winter month, the nets are only put up when booked in advance. The five-a-side football pitches are being refurbished with dates to be confirmed in the coming weeks. This will be a significant investment to improving the facilities that are used by the school in the daytime and the public on evenings and weekends. Now, in terms of ongoing investment, we're talking to governing bodies such as the Football Foundation and the Lawn Tennis Association for future funding opportunities. Warrington is part of those talks around improved provision, but like so many organisations, funding is not available in the next year or two to start looking at options. We will keep working with partners, though, to seek support and investment where we can. So that is the official reply. Jamie, do you want to say who you are and what you do within the council?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Jamie Fenton. I'm the partnership manager for culture, sport and leisure. Nathan, thank you very much for the question, and you're right. In terms of the sporting and leisure facilities, obviously we are working to see what we can do to improve the area. As Councillor Fitzgerald's just mentioned, you know, the good news is we are looking and, well, we're confirming a date for replacing like for like the all-weather pitch at Warrington, which gets a lot of use, which will be great to see. With regards to the tennis courts, obviously without them being floodlit, it is quite hard to use them as tennis courts in autumn winter months, but I have been assured that there has been quite a detailed cleanup process in there, and netball have been using them and are using them and booking them at the moment. So if you are having issues with bookings or anything, feel free to come to me, and I can go direct to Vivacity under Peterborough Limited to speak to those guys if there are further issues.
Yeah, that's brilliant to hear. Actually, that's really good to hear that there's going to be a bit more investment in the sort of maintenance side of that, particularly the sort of football pitches. And yeah, the only other feedback I'd had was from the netball groups that were a bit concerned about the safety of the courts, and there were a lot of leaves and things like that on them, and sort of slippage sort of risks and the like. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that the council is like positively looking at how it can sort of both maintain and improve those facilities in Warrington. Yeah, so we've got a lot of outdoor space, a lot of green space, but you know, our outdoor sporting facilities are getting a bit tired after sort of 30 or so years. So thank you for that.
I think that's the same for me. after 30 years or so, it seems I'm getting a bit tired now. So Nathan, listen, have you got anything else you need a bit of clarity on, or are you okay with that?
I'm fine. I think John's got his hand. I can see a yellow hand on his.
Well, it's not normal, and I don't want to set a precedent at all, because John is the next questioner. But if he's got something burning he wants to say, I'm sure I don't mind him saying it. And nobody else will.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. Yeah, it's a shame you will confirm. I did have a complaint several months ago from the netball team in the Playerman pub, would you believe? And I passed on to Jamie, so Jamie was looking into it, but I appreciate everything that goes on and any help we can get, because it is getting run down. We're shadowed there. It's nowhere near the standard it should be. So thank you very much for listening.
Great. So Nathan, listen, thanks for your question. Always interested to hear what residents have got to say. Otherwise, we don't know really, you know, what people think. So this is that opportunity for you to ask that question and hopefully get some reassurance that, you know, while things are tough at the council, you know, our financial challenges are indeed tough. We are doing what we can, and we will seek funding from, you know, external sources and try and plow it back into communities, because that's what we're here for. You know, there's been many a good example in terms of community development and investment. Most recently, of course, we've just done these autistic communication boards, which, you know, are enhancing play facilities and where people might come to spend leisure time. And that's actually been something really good. That's in Longthorpe, where some of the reinvestment in park and play facilities has happened. And that's happening across the city as well. But also, I think, you know, your points about sport in general, whether it be tennis or bowls or cricket, we get this stuff all the time. I think we constantly have to just juggle and, you know, find money to do it, because it's great to keep people fit and healthy. So Nathan, thanks for your question. And again, stay on if you want to. By all means, you can slip away and do something more interesting rather than listening to me. So,
No,
okay.
I'll stay on and listen to the cycling.
Great. Okay. Lovely. So you are listening to Ask the Leader with me, Wayne Fitzgerald, leader here at Peterborough City Council. It's your opportunity to get involved, ask me a question, or a member of the council's officer team, or indeed another councillor. And speaking of another councillor, although I'm not entirely sure if he's a councillor tonight, because he's listed as John Fox, but he is a fellow councillor, but he's also a resident as well, and he takes a great deal of interest in Warrington, but I don't think his question is necessarily about that. So Councillor John Fox, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Wayne. The government seemed to have a large pot of money to encourage more people to get out and do cycling for obvious reasons, for health reasons. And more people are getting involved, as you know, throughout the pandemic, more people are out on the bikes, and it's great to see. But to the northeast side of our city, there are no substantial safe cycling routes joining up Newborough, or Thorney with our urban areas such as Warrington. You know, you can't drive from Warrington out to Thorney, Newborough, on a safe route, and I think that concerns a lot of people. ROSPA just statistically report that you're twice as likely to be killed on our rural roads or injured than in our urban areas. So how's the council apply for any of this funding? And if so, what is their intentions to do with the funding they get? Because I believe it is important to link up communities. Joining communities together is what it's all about. And as you notice out in the rural, we have a lot of T-spots now, all of a sudden coming up. Moore's Farm's got a beautiful one just at Newborough. But the cycle from Warrington to Newborough along the Warrington Bridge Road, yes, it's okay to a degree, but it'd be better with a safe cycle route. And definitely towards Newborough, as you know, I travel that road quite regular, and I wouldn't bike down there at the moment because it's quite horrendous at times. So can you tell me what your plans are? Because I believe the urban areas have got quite a large amount and got a good quota of safe cycle routes, but we need it out in the rural as well, joining up places like Warrington, Gunthorpe, Paston.
Thanks, John, for your question. As ever, always welcome, whether in person or on here. I've got Rebecca Presland also attending tonight, and I'm sure she'll want to comment in a moment. But cycling in our rural areas is very important, and we are, of course, very fortunate to have the Green Wheel, which is a fantastic facility for people to use across the city. Although I accept it doesn't cover all our rural areas, it is true much of the recent work within the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan has been focused on the urban area, because that's where the DFT is telling us should be our main focus, where we can access funding for. You'll know that some of the very, shall we say, controversial schemes in terms of the, cycling in the city did come from central government. So it would be wrong of us not to take advantage of that government money, and another tranche has just been awarded, which is available, which we put in grant applications for a segregated cycleway on Thorpe Wood, which is part of some of the improvement schemes there, linked to improving cycling and walking rates, linking the residential areas to the business park and Ferry Meadows in particular. But I agree with you that we need a plan for our rural areas, because there could be future funding opportunities that we do not want to miss out. And I expect the soon to be re-established cycling and walking member working group, which is made up of councillors and officers, which John, I think you're probably a member of, will look into rural cycle routes in more detail, so that we can have or develop a plan for where the investment should be made if funding opportunities become available. And you know that, whether that's through the combined authority or directly with government, I'll be batting for Peterborough, which includes rural, and every single alleyway and byway and road in the city, if we can make improvements. Because, I've made my position clear that I want to improve cycling and walking everywhere we can, because it keeps people fitter and healthier. But I want it to be a plan, a proper plan, not, schemes that are half-cocked and nobody's really thought about. Let's, which does take time. And I know that's frustrating for many, but we need to do it in a proper, planned way. So, Rebecca, do you want to come in and add anything to what I've said there in terms of for Councillor Fox?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I completely agree with you, Councillor Fox. We do need to be looking at our rural routes. Currently, our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, our LCWIP, it's being amended because although we do have quite a lot of routes in the urban area, they're not compliant with the new design standards set out by the government under LTM 120. So the DFT have advised us to develop the LCWIP in order to be able to unlock funding to get the routes that have been identified to basically provide.
Rebecca, could you just explain for people what LCWIP is? Anybody watching this will go, what the hell's LCWIP? They may think it's a person.
Okay, sorry. It's our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. So this was a DFT competition that we bid for technical assistance to develop a couple of years ago now, and it's a 10-year plan looking at the whole of the city and looking at where people are travelling to and from the most. So it's for short journeys, commuting journeys, school journeys, and some leisure journeys that offer on these routes that offer the biggest potential to encourage more people to get out on their bikes or walking. So so we completed a data-driven exercise to identify 15 cycling routes and 15 walking routes from key origins and destinations in the city. So from, for instance, Woodston to the city centre, from Hampton to the city centre, various different, there's lots of different routes anyway that kind of all spoke out from the city centre. Because these offer the greatest potential to increase numbers of people walking and cycling. Now, we've done preliminary investigations and everything, but then with the new LTN 120 design guidance, the current infrastructure then isn't adequate. So we're having to refresh the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan now. But it is a live document. I can't stress this enough, that once we get these key urban routes sorted out, we are then going to expand it so that we can join up, more rural areas and villages with these connections. So that would be kind of the second stage then of the development of our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. I do want to reassure you as well, Councillor Fox, that our sustainable travel team are constantly looking for pots of money and funding, and we would love to do some stuff in the rural areas, because I completely agree with you. It can be quite dicey out there. And if any does come available, I will certainly bear your comments in mind and get back to you. But yeah, that's kind of a very brief overview.
John, anything to come back on?
Yeah, I mean, there's some areas, and I'm sure you looked into it, such as Warrington, along Car Dyke. It takes you all the way through Manor Drive, where they've put some cycle paths in, but it's the wrong side of the dyke. But never mind, you could put a bridge there to link it up. And equally, it comes out across Gunton's Road, and it will go to the new Leeds estate that they're going to build. And this is up, and then straight all the way to Hodney Road and And the Romans used that 2,000 years ago. The path's still there. It used to be a track. It's now worn down by people walking their dogs quite regular. It wouldn't take much to turn that into a cycle way. I know Lee Moore is looking into it, but equally there's the old railway line from to Wisbech. I'm not to suggest we go all the way to Wisbech, but you could link up to Thorney along that track, because the track's still there and the land's still there. It's those sort of things, and a lot of the banks at Maxi, all around the rural area, people use them to walk their dogs. If they're walking, it could easily be converted into a cycle track and make it a safe cycle track, cutting out the villages, going to one village to another, but on a safe route. Glint Peacock to Northborough, there's one through the woods. There's areas in Warrington where there used to be cycle paths, but over the years have been left to overgrow. And I could take anybody on a bike now and show you those routes, but you can't get through them because they're overgrown.
John, this is what we should be looking at. Maybe for the ones to bring up the cycling and.
Yeah, I will do. I have done. I'll keep repeating it and repeating it.
Indeed.
I'll keep repeating it.
John, thanks a lot.
Thanks very much indeed.
And thanks, Rebecca, for your input. This is Ask the Leader, where you get to ask me questions, which members of the public and occasionally the odd councillor can go on as well. I have no problem speaking to anyone. I see John all the time, and he cares passionately about the city and the area that he represents. So indeed, as I said earlier, you can ask any question you like. All you need to do is email Ask the Leader at peterborough.gov.uk. The next session will be in January. And the lovely Amanda, who you can see on screen there, is the lady that puts all the questions together and works out who's who and what's what. So we'll move on. We've still got a couple of questions to squeeze in before I manage to sit down and get some food this evening. So question 4 is from Catherine Lovelock, who I see on the screen. So Catherine, do you want to put your question?
Sure, thank you very much. It seems quite fitting, actually, because bearing in mind the other 2 questions have been about sporting activity. Mine is about the access to swimming pools in the city. I'm just going to read from my email I sent you.
Sure.
So currently, the only place that you can swim in the early mornings outside of a private club such as David Lloyd is either at the regional pool, which is only after 7:30 in the mornings in the main pool. Otherwise, you can swim from 6:30, but only in the diving pit, or at Premier Fitness at 6:30 a.m. On a Saturday, you can only swim at Premier in the mornings from 8 a.m. because the regional doesn't even open to the public for public swimming until after about 1 o'clock. And according to the Vivacity website, I don't even think Jack Hunt has actually even reopened yet following COVID. The regional serves a purpose, and it's convenient and it's easy, but it's very dated. Often the showers are out of order. The nearest place to park, the walk through to the entrance of the pool is dark and secluded, and I know I certainly feel very unsafe in the early mornings walking through there. Also, if, like, for example, this very weekend that's just gone, the pool was closed for the entire weekend for a swimming gala, so the only place you could swim is at Premier, which is obviously cleaner, it's more aesthetically pleasing, it's got better showers, the parking is certainly safer and easier. But the downside is, if you want to go and swim there, you either have to sign up for a £59 a month membership fee, or you can only go on a day pass, which is quite extortionately priced anyway, £15. It's fine if you want to go and use all the other facilities, but when you just want to swim a couple of times a week or 2 or 3 times a week for about 40 minutes, it's not exactly good value for money. So my question is, why can't Vivacity offer a swim-only membership for about, say, £25 or £30 a month, where you could swim at any of the swimming pool sites, including Premier? It just seems a little bit short-sighted to not offer that as an option, especially when we've talked about, you know, obesity levels, making sure people have full access to as much, you know, health and fitness activities as possible. That's it. Thank you.
Do you know what? I just can say I entirely agree with you, but the problem is, I'm sure Jamie, who's on the line in charge of all that, might have something else to say. Look, let me just give you some personal background. I mean, I use the Vivacity Premier every now, you know, I'm strangely
as did I until COVID hit. And
well, that's exactly what I was going to say, and I feel rather guilty that I've not been able to go, because since then I've also become leader of the council, and my golly, the pressures on my time have increased enormously. My wife, though, uses the regional pool probably 2 or 3 times a week, swims a mile, you know, every time, and you know, puts me to shame. So I know all about, you know, what goes on in the state of the pool and all the other things, and I know the advantages and disadvantages. And you may have also, or you might also recall that earlier we'd announced plans to try and replace the regional pool with a new facility. That is proving difficult to take forward, but I've not given up on that, because I agree with you, it's dated, and we should be looking towards better facilities for residents. But again, I temper that with it's all got to be paid for. So we're trying to come up with a solution to replace the regional pool. We're not there yet, and our capital expenditure is somewhat pressured and on hold. But rest assured, I entirely agree with you about your frustrations, and as an individual, I can share them. But what I'm duty bound to do is read out what the reality of the situation is, and you know, it's frustrating for me sometimes because I just like to say, yeah, let's do that. But, you know, and then somebody, normally an officer, says, well, actually, councillor, that's not actually quite the way it is. So Vivacity, of which I'm a member, provides a number of memberships across the city with prices ranging from £36 to £55 per month, depending on your age and your needs, of course. The business model is based around what they call peak and off-peak usage rather than all-inclusive or a pay-per-service model. If a swim-only model was introduced, it would mean that other membership types would need to increase in price to subsidise the swim-only options. And I have to say, I do agree with about the charge does seem a little bit high, but maybe Jamie can explain that why that is. So it might make some other memberships unaffordable if we did that. So Vivacity aims to provide access to all its facilities at a variety of price points across the city. The Jack Hunt pool you mentioned is currently closed to public swimming due to a lack, strangely enough, of qualified lifeguards. It's a bit like lorry drivers, I suppose. We now seem to have a shortage of lifeguards. I don't think I'd make a very good one. However, it does remain open for the swim academy and school swimming. So my plea is, if you're a lifeguard, come and work for us, because I think we've got plenty of vacancies, or we'll maybe offer training to be a lifeguard. I see Jamie nodding. The Regional Fitness and Swimming Centre at Vivacity Premier Fitness offer a balanced timetable of pool sessions from 6:30 Monday to Friday and from 8 AM at Vivacity Premier Fitness at the weekends. Their fitness day pass price is in line with comparable leisure sites across the city and has proven popular for many people. At the Regional Fitness and Swimming Centre, a single swim for an adult will cost £4.10 and £3.10 per child session. My wife was paying daily until I convinced her that the amount of time she was going, it was better that she bought a monthly pass.
And indeed, I would be happy to start going and just paying for a monthly membership at the regional rather than Premier if I felt that I could utilise it properly. But because it just doesn't open to the public until 1 o'clock on a Saturday, and that's one of the main days that if I'm going to pay for a membership, I want to go. Well, I can't justify paying it because I'd be paying to go there.
We'll let Jamie come in with the rationale, but I'm on your side, believe me. He's got a job to convince me as well. So, but just in closing, Vivacity regularly reviews their swimming pool timetable to ensure that adequate water space provision is always available to meet the necessary demand. But I understand and I hear your frustrations because, again, I'm just like you. I'm a member of the public. I use these facilities. My wife uses those facilities. And Jamie, you've heard the question in terms of what Catherine has said. You've heard what I've said. What have you got to add to this debate so far this evening?
Yeah, of course, and thank you for the question. So you're absolutely right, Catherine. There is actually a shortage of water space within Peterborough. That's a fact. We've had that study done over the last few years, and as Councillor Fitzgerald said, we have been looking at options to replace the very dated regional pool facility. But obviously that comes at a high cost, especially at the moment, and the capital costs of borrowing on top of that just make that unaffordable at this point in time. But we are still looking, at ways we can make that work. In terms of the water space early morning, again, Vivacity have got a tough job on their hands at the moment. They're trying to balance the programme of club swimming, tuition for youngsters, as well as actually the public. So 6:30 does open at the regional pool, but it is the diving bit, and appreciate that. Obviously, it doesn't give you that full 25 metre length of swimming. At the moment, the swimming club do have the whole pool, which is unusual. They don't normally have it from as well. It's till 7:30, I believe, at the moment, but that will be reviewed moving forward. That can't take place until Jack Hunt Pool is then reopened to the public. We've got a bit of an issue, and it's not just in Peterborough, it's up and down the country where we have a massive lack of qualified staff for lifeguarding, for gym instructing, and for duty managers. This has all been from not just from COVID, but from everything else that's been going on. We have courses on at the moment. So we every holiday time, we try and put courses on and get people trained up and qualified to then come and work for the operator. At the moment, we've got a lot of jobs out, and we are sort of asking colleges, universities, any establishments to try and push people towards looking at that as being a career opportunity. So far, it's not forthcoming. And as a result, we've had to take a difficult decision of just keeping Gap Hunt open just for the swimming academy and the swimming, the school swimming itself. That will be reviewed when we can change that. We're hoping we could change that in the new year. But as it stands at the moment, we still can't do that. We still don't have enough qualified staff. And as you'd appreciate, we are governed by how many lifeguards we need for pool space and for actual bathers in the pool. So it's not like we can just let anyone in. We do have to control that number. Going back to the point about Premier Fitness, Premier Fitness, the way that model has worked is that when you enter that site, you can go anywhere in that site. So if we did open it up for a swim only membership, we are opening the facility up for people misusing that, and it would happen, unfortunately. There's no controls. Once you go past reception, there's no way of knowing where people go. And then obviously those that are paying their membership technically are missing, are losing out because they're paying that higher fee. Just to confirm, the actual monthly price has been lowered. It's actually come down, it's £55 a month. That's the peak price. Obviously, there are off-peak charges that you could use instead, and that's very much how Vivacity modelled themselves. So rather than doing swim only and membership, they've done it on peak price, which is obviously any time for all the facilities, or you can do 8 till 4:30, which is the off-peak time. So there is a bit of a difference in that membership, and that does save around £10 or so a month at each facility. But I do understand it can be frustrating when you can't get in that early morning slot if that's the key area you're looking for.
Okay. Is there any reason why you can't just pay per session at the Premier though, like you can at the regional? And also, is there any reason why you can only do a student membership at anywhere but Premier as well then?
So yeah, Premier, in all honesty, Premier's been based on competing with the private market. We had to form it that way to balance the books.
But with all due respect, it isn't the same quality as a private club. I was a member of Premier for a good couple of years before COVID hit, and there were a number of problems with it. Showers frequently not working, the steam room out of order, or the sauna was out of order. So you can only charge those prices if you're going to offer the same level of service. It's not a criticism, but I'm just saying it's probably not at that level anymore than it was when it first opened. Yeah, no, it's a fair point. I mean, my background, just to let you know, is I've managed private clubs as well as public sector facilities. I would argue it's as good as your Bannatynes and your David Lloyd, and it's cheaper than both of those facilities. If there are problems, which you will get at those other facilities as well, I think it needs flagging. And again, if you're getting no joy from the operator, please, by all means, come to me and I can speak to the operator, to the operational team or the senior management team there to try and rectify those issues, especially if they're occurring, over and over again. We need to get to the bottom of why that's happening. Okay. So would you consider student membership at Premier?
I can table that to the operator to see how that would work, to see what they say about that, and then I can come back to you. That's no problem.
Brilliant, thank you.
Right. So Catherine, not sticking up from a council perspective, just as an ordinary user, I would tend to agree with Jamie, because those things you're pointing out, I remember also that the steam room didn't work, that this didn't work, and that didn't work. I think they had a period of a few months where they had some technical issues, and they were ironed out, and I think it was a management issue, and just a number of things that came together. Because I've also been to other facilities personally, and I won't name the hotel, but where similar things happened. The other thing, what probably is not apparent to you, is the cost of the development of Premier has got to be paid back in terms of the rent, because it was purpose built and the council have a lease, and that lease has costs, and that cost has to be met and profit has to be made in order to maintain the service. So where it's priced is similar in terms of to the private sector. I would agree with Jamie. I mean, I used to go to Bannatyne years ago. People don't believe I've been to the gym, but I did, and it's great to see that you're such a keen swimmer. But let me just give you a little bit of broader thinking. So whilst we are trying to improve leisure facilities, one of the things, and he sat in the room with me, Councillor Allen, who's my deputy, who is in charge of all the culture and leisure stuff, we're trying to find a long-term solution to how we make more use of the Lido, in terms of bringing that into use more days of the year by improving the facilities there, and perhaps co-locating any new pool facility nearby or adjacent to it, not perhaps where it was first mooted to go on the Fair Pleasure Meadow car park, because we have a great facility in the Lido and it's historic, great, Art Deco.
It's a wonderful place.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I'm going to drive forward, if we can, is, trying to bid for some lottery funding or other funding to restore the Lido. That's one thing, no promises, but these are where we want to be as a kind of thinking, and put in another, great facility like Premier, but right in the city centre, and bring that kind of modern approach to leisure and swimming, which I think people want. We just have to find a way of paying for it. So that is the challenge, because at the same time, I'm hearing what you're saying. I know 15 quid to go in for a day, for a pass, is a lot of money to go for a swim. Hence, I've told my wife, no, go to the regional, because it's where she works in town and so on and so forth. And it's we have great facilities here compared with other places, but we need to improve them, just need to find the money to do it. So I'm with you. I understand if I could wave a magic wand and cut that to 7 quid, I would do, but I don't think the people who count the beans in the town hall would go, oh, that's losing us money, councillor. We don't want to do that. So I hope that's given you some hope and reassurance. Yeah. And we are trying to improve things. And also, just on the current pool, maybe, Jamie, you could look at lighting there, particularly with Catherine's concerns about, the feeling of safety, and just make sure that, that is looked at, and so there aren't any safety concerns. I hope that also reassures you, Catherine.
Yeah, perfect. And someone will come back about the possible student, looking at the student possibility at the Premier.
Your man is there. Jamie has given you that undertaking, and I'm sure he'll do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thanks for offering this service.
That's great. Stay on the line if you want to. We're on the final stretch here, folks. It's question 5 tonight, and you are listening to Ask the Leader with me, Wayne Fitzgerald, leader here at Peterborough City Council. If you'd like to take part in a future event, it is simple. All you need to do is email your question or what you want to talk to me about, or any member of the cabinet or other councillor, or indeed officer that will be on hand to support. Just simply email asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk. Now, our final question tonight is from Matthew Leedon, who can't be with us to ask the question in person. So the lovely Amanda, who works very hard in comms and has got kids and everything to look after, but she's here tonight because she's going to ask the question on behalf of Matthew. Do you want to take it away?
I can, yes. So it's a fairly lengthy question, but I'll read it in its entirety. So the question is, with the new drive for carbon efficiency and electric vehicles, what provision is being planned for allocated parking in zoned parking areas? Currently, I live in Zone E, which permits parking in any of the streets in Zone E, and doesn't provide an allocated space. I'm often not able to park outside my house, which at the moment is acceptable. However, if I was to consider buying an electric vehicle, I would not be able to park outside my house at night. Therefore, I would be unable to charge my vehicle overnight with the current on-road parking capability. I'm sure across different parts of Peterborough where there are no driveways for cars and it's a first come, first served basis on where to park, this will potentially be a hurdle that needs addressing. I totally understand the need to consider the environmental impact of motor vehicles and make Peterborough a green city and the environment capital of the UK. However, the options to charge electric vehicles from residential properties and associated parking need some serious consideration before taking this further. I would be delighted to know your thoughts on this issue, as currently I'm prevented from even thinking about buying a fully electric vehicle.
Right. Well, great for that. So thanks to Matthew for his question. And I believe zone E, was it?
That's right.
Is in the central ward of the city, Dogsthorpe Road, All Saints Road, Princess Street, Huntley Grove, Granville Street, and Henry Street. So somewhere in that area. Claire also might want to chip in on this because it's probably her thing as well. But what I would say is parking is a constant frustration for everybody, myself included. And, you know, people living in crowded inner city urban areas, particularly, I share their frustration, but we have a growing number of electric vehicle charge points across the city. Furthermore, we've incentivized the uptake of electric vehicles through a number of initiatives, such as providing free parking and free charging to EV drivers. We also offer businesses grants to install charging infrastructure as a means to promote the uptake of EVs. We generally in the council understand the issues faced by residents who do not have access to off-street parking, which could be a barrier to switching to an electric vehicle. I've just switched to a hybrid myself, but you know, I'm fortunate that I have a driveway, and I know that many people don't. So we're currently in the process of drawing up plans to apply for government funding to install on-street residential charge points. We'll aim to have the first chargers installed in the next financial year, 22-23. Furthermore, we'll be looking at other means to ensure that on-street charging is given first consideration. So that's the official line. In terms of where I think we should be going, I mean, there's talk about you know, charge points in lampposts. So it doesn't have to be outside your own home. That's one option. There are also charging pads. We've got communal charging. But I mean, I did make a comment before. I think I'd like to see a situation where, you know, vehicles themselves provide more of their own power. Like in my case, I've got a hybrid, you know, it's charging itself. So I think technology or the future will provide the answer in terms of EV charging and where this technology goes in the future. I don't envisage a situation where we're having to, you know, wire up every house because I just don't think that would be technically, you know, well, the cost of doing so really would be prohibitive. So I think we need to be smarter in the way that we perhaps take up those options for electric vehicle charging. But I would remind people that in Peterborough, we have the highest proportion of electric vehicles in terms of percentages, I believe something like 11%, as reported in the Sunday Times quite recently. We are a very green, clean, environmental city, in the top 10 in the country. And what we do with EV is going to be pivotal to how we develop and keep those credentials. So I don't know, Claire, from a parking perspective, if there's anything you want to add on that. And maybe you weren't expecting to, but I'll ask you anyway.
No, nothing really to add. I just think that as we move forward with this, we're the parking services, highways, and other departments will be completely linked up to make sure that we're putting in the correct solutions as we move forward with it.
Okay, so I'd like to thank Matthew for his question. In fact, I'd like to thank all the people that have joined the call tonight, which was Nathan, Ian Gillis, Councillor John Fox, and indeed Catherine. So thanks all for your questions. It's always a pleasure. The next one will be in January, and if you want to take part, you can simply ask the leader at peterborough.gov.uk. Just send your email to that and get your questions in early. And we normally do about 5 or 6 during the evening, so it's always a pleasure to hear from you. But for now, we won't see you on this forum between now and the new year. So have yourself a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we look forward to another Ask the Leader session in the new year. But for now, thanks and goodbye.